So for some of our investors out here, they're looking at, maybe wanting to, purchase some existing. Maybe, everybody may not want to build like you guys have done, per se, but if they're looking at existing, what kind of tips would you have for
That's what any kind of self-storage mastermind or mentor is going to recommend, that you buy existing. And that's probably definitely the easiest route, because development is difficult and there's so many hurdles, especially if you go all the way through entitlement and everything. There's so many different things that could happen that just totally kills your deal. So, for us, if we were looking at an existing facility, and we do look for existing facilities and make offers on them, but we're looking for at least 100 units, like the cupcake deal. Like, you don't want to have all these systems in place for 30 units. And I just got off the phone with someone the other day, and he was like, "Oh, I finally found one that I can afford. It's $450,000, 35 units, all this." And I was like, "Okay, well, what's the gross? And this is your expense ratio, and then divide that by your cap rate. And now, does this match up?" And so what it was really worth to him was in the 200s, and what the seller wanted was 450. So if you guys understand commercial real estate, right? You know what your cap rate is and what you're borrowing at. And so for self-storage, like, kind of a very general rule of thumb is you're looking at your gross actual rents. All right. So the seller's going to say, "Oh, I'm getting X," but the truth is, like, what's the P&L say? What's the T12 say? I want your last 3 years tax return. So let's see what the true situation is here. Then we're going to take that, and on average, it's a 30% expense ratio. Now, if you scale and you have several facilities and one call center and one manager, then yeah, you can get it down to 15, 17% if you're doing really good, really streamlined. But don't calculate it that way. Calculate it at 30%. All right. And so, take that and divide that by your cap rate. And people are like, "Well, what's my cap rate?" Well, I don't know. What kind of return are you looking for your money? What's the interest rate on the loans right now? I can't get a loan for 2-3% like I used to could. So my cap rate's a lot higher. I got to get a lot better deal. And so, whatever that is, then that's your offer price. Send out your LOI, and then have all of your criteria. Okay, now I need to go out and inspect it. And just because it's a new facility does not mean it does not have leaky roofs. Okay, so I hear this all the time. People are like, "Oh, well, it's a new facility, it should be fine. I make this offer and go out there and buy it." No, you still have to go do all the inspections that you would do for if it's new or old, because I can tell you from experience, you got to do that stuff.
Yep. And then
Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, from a construction standpoint, I'm always looking for value add, which I know everybody is. And so the value add things that we're typically looking for is obviously more land to expand, and looking at the demand and making sure that there's opportunity there. You can make up a lot of ground with new construction that way. And then also, like, looking at rents, obviously, when's the last time rents were raised? What's the market rent in the area? We're looking at, even when we're looking at adding more units, we're looking at properties that typically people think you can't add any more units, but we're bringing in portable units that you can actually put all the way up to your property line. So you don't have to have a setback, because it is portable. As long as you can get forks under it and move it around, it's considered portable, although it'll probably stay there forever. Is another good way to make a thin deal work, when you're looking at cramming in even 20-30 more units. If it's only a 30-unit facility, you might have doubled its capacity right off the bat at a very low cost. Especially if there's just gravel sitting there or whatever.
I've never heard of that before, but
That's a really good one that
that
we RV parking. If there's land available, but there's not a huge demand right now, the return on gravel is way better than the return on metal buildings, actually. And so that's a really good one to do. We've got friends that have done storage yards, so like contractor yards, roping or fencing off gravel areas and renting out space to contractors by the month for their materials or equipment or whatever. I've got friends that have even rented space to Bitcoin miners to put their facilities there, and then renting to them by the month at a high rate. if there's opportunity to get a cell phone tower, I mean, there's all kind of things that we're looking at, billboards.
Yeah.
Whatever, if there's any opportunity to increase that NOI, that can go to the bottom line and increase the value of the property, then we're gonna try to factor those things in there, but typically she's gonna underwrite it. Fortunately, she underwrites it and I don't, because I'm more optimistic than she is, and everything's a deal to me, but it's gotta work through her underwriting before I get to add any value to it anyway, so it's already gotta be a deal. That way, we're gonna live in a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And if all my great ideas don't pan out, it still works as a business as it is.
Yeah.
So those are just my tidbits to add to that.
I was gonna ask, why invest in self-storage over any other property class type?
No toilets, tenants, trash.
So just less management, that's just the biggest plus. What other pluses are there?
It's just-
Easy to build, you know,
Boring.
it's easy to build, it's very passive, nobody's there. Low management,
Resilient through all economies.
resilient through a lot of economies for sure.
I was gonna say, you guys can speak a little bit more on the SBA loan and that whole process. Was that something that covered the first phase of the 200 and some odd units, or was that for more than that? And what does that like, what did that look like, the construction costs for those first phases, I guess?
So a lot of people avoid SBA loans because of the red tape. But after I got my credit cleared up, it was clean, it was just a clean credit report. And I had a job and my debt to income, I was like a good borrower, just a good, safe, straight down the line borrower. But I didn't have any money. I didn't have any assets, but none of that mattered because they're lending on what you're going to be, the asset that the business that you're creating. And so I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult, but it was not. It got approved very quickly. And I thought I was going to have to bring in partners, all sorts of things. No, did not have to. And so they build it so it's more expensive, right? It's going to be a higher interest rate. You're going to have to pay for a construction manager to manage the stuff, make sure it's done correctly. They're going to build in the lease up, right? Like who's going to pay the electric bill before you start making $1? They're building that into the loan for you. Who's going to pay the interest payments when they start coming in, but you're not getting enough rent yet? They build all that in for you and it's still got to work. And who says it works? The feasibility study that I didn't have to do. And
So basically, if you had to choose to get an equity partner to bring in the down payments and some of those things on a traditional loan, this is kind of a better deal because you can keep your equity into the property. Now you're just going to pay more fees and more interest up front. But once you're to a certain point, you can always refinance out.
Sure.
it's good for
Yeah.
first time builders or borrowers.
It's a good
We
strategy.
wouldn't do it again because now we can put down more. Now we don't have to pay that high of an interest
Right.
rate and all these extra fees. Like
So
we
you
now
just did that on the first phase?
Yeah,
just on the first phase. Now we know how to front load a budget so that we're paying for the interest and stuff like that. But we didn't know about any of that whenever we got that SBA loan. That's what those are good for. That's what they're for. Small businesses, to
Right.
get small businesses started.
it helped us a lot through COVID. I mean, it was a blessing to have it through
Yeah.
COVID because although our business did very well, they still forgave some of the
They
payments. and
paid
stuff.
like
It
our
was like
payments.
8 or
for-
9 months.
It was like $70,000. It was crazy.
Right.
And it wasn't printed money. It came from the fees that we had paid to get an SBA loan. So I'm real anti gifts from the government. Like I don't want to get tied into any kind of contract or support printing money or anything like that. But this came out of the fees that we had paid in to get that loan. And so I was a pretty big fan of that happening.
So basically getting your money back.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you'd been paying in, so.
So for somebody that wanted to get started in self-storage, what's the first steps?
Well, I think it would just depend on like what your goal would be starting into self-storage, like. For example, are you talking about yourself, like if you would want to get into self-storage?
All right, we've got a few rentals and stuff, but I've looked at self-storage over the years. I've just not left,
So,
because I
like-
don't know where to start.
Acquiring self-storage or
Yeah.
starting from ground up?
Well,
Yeah.
from what you said, it's probably easier to buy something that's already built. Do I look out a market to find something that can price out better, or do I try and do it close to where I'm at?
That's what I would do.
I mean, yeah, it's all personal preference, but I would do anything I was gonna do for the first time close to myself, so I could keep an eye on it and really, make sure that what's going on is going the right direction.
I would be calling, 70% of self-storage facilities are owned by mom and pops, individuals, not the REIT. So I would be calling on those facilities. I would be calling the manager, which is probably the owner, and talking to them and,
Just
you know,
ask them if they have any interest.
yeah, just like you
Build
would
a
on other
relationship.
properties.
I mean, it's all relationship. Yeah.
Or a broker, you know, tell them, I'm looking to buy self-storage. This is my criteria. Please keep me on your list and keep following up. So you're top of
You
mind.
know, none of those, so.
Yeah, so there's multiple different ways, or you can send out a bunch of mailers, you know, just like with single family, you know, or multifamily or whatever you're trying to do. There's several different strategies on how you can do it. It's which way do you want to do it?
Yeah, first step just being, well, yeah, first, the vision of what you're trying to accomplish. Second, studying your underwriting for that vision that you're trying to get to. And then, you know, trying to lock arms with people that's done it or keeping people close by, you know, having good contacts and networks.
So I know how people go about underwriting multifamily, so how is how much different is underwriting self-storage than underwriting a multifamily?
We know a little bit about multifamily and underwriting, and so, yeah, it's very similar. You know, you're looking at your gross, you're taking out vacancy, you know, and you've got an expense ratio, and that equals a series of things, which you'll learn about. But in the beginning, you know, you can just use a ratio just to kind of figure out, like, am I in the ballpark to even figure this out even further?
I mean, it's essentially the same thing. It's just not as many
Commercial
expenses.
is all kind of like that.
So you have
What is
less expenses. It's
expense
gonna be
ratio?
easier underwriting. for
Which cap
the
rate?
Commercial,
Yeah,
as long as, yeah, you figure out what your cap rate is.
We didn't know what
With your
cap rate
brokers.
was when we
Yeah.
did the first phase. So,
if anybody wants tips and tricks on underwriting, Drew back there can help you, right, Drew?
Don't put that pressure on me.
So he does a great job at doing
And then
that.
after you do a few,
Yeah.
like for us, the best way for us to practice underwriting was just sitting at home at night. We pick 5 or 10 properties, you know, to look at, and then a couple days a week, we would sit down and put it on the computer and run through it together. And all these deals are gonna work because we would just pull them from you know, whatever the
LoopNet or something.
LoopNet or something. By the time they make it there, you know, they're probably not gonna work anyway, but
Feels
it's
good
good
enough.
practice just to take them and underwrite them and underwrite. And then try to figure out what would it look like if it did work.
Mhm, yeah.
And then, you know,
But
you just get
no, I
that
think
muscle
that's-
memory of.
yeah, and I think that's great, because I mean, you know, many of our clients who buy multifamily, they underwrite, you know, they'll underwrite. What, 100, 200, you know, a lot of times if they get the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they go through so many of them, but it definitely,
That's the best way to learn.
yeah, definitely.
For
So,
me,
yeah, so I want to jump in on when you'd mentioned about. You had talked about mobile home that you're gonna convert to self-storage. So tell me about that. You know, you know, because most people buy or buy a mobile home park to keep it a mobile home park, but
Yeah.
you're gonna be converting it to self-storage?
Yeah, we bought in February of last year, we bought a wholesale deal. It wasn't a deal like it was, but we got it seller financed and we brought in a private money partner and we ended up getting money back at closing. So, you know, you can make things a deal, right, with the right structure. And we said, okay, it was already stabilized. We said it was non-conforming was the problem, right? So if one of the trailers burned down, we can't put another one there. We can't add anymore.
and they're all super old, 60s, 70s.
Yeah, like pre-HUD trailers, it was pretty slummy place, but it had people in it and they were paying rent. And so we said, you know, this looks like it was another like highway situation where it was next to this airport in our town. We're like, this looks like a good opportunity for commercial. So we'll take it, we're gonna buy it because we can turn around and resell it just like it is on the MLS if we need to, or wherever you sell mobile home parks, I don't even know. And so we did, we took it through zoning and, you know, that takes a little bit while. And this was like the first situation where everyone was like, oh, please make this storage, right? Everyone hates storage because they think about the C-class storage that's like cockroach storage with the barbed wire fence. And that's just not what you build anymore. You might buy it, but you don't build that anymore. And yeah, the house with flying colors. And so you take, this is the 6 acre, or is it 8 acres? Okay, oh, and it has a house on it too. So we got it zoned multi-use, so we're gonna keep the house on it and use it for residential right now, but we can use it for office space in the future. And just that rezoning alone took this property from, I think we bought it for like 300 or 350. And it had like 8 mobile homes maybe and a house on it, and it was worth that, like it was, no money out of pocket, so instant infinite returns, right? Because we're getting cash flow from these trailers and rezoned it. Now
It
we're
was
gonna,
producing $6,000.
yeah,
We'll leave it at that.
yeah, now we're donating the trailers end of May to this guy who fixes them up for we've had some catastrophes in our county, and he'll give them to people that need housing. And then we have a 3-phase project on it. We'll do like 20,000 square foot at a time and then stabilize that and build it out slowly.
So what's the plan? How many units in the plan that you're
So,
gonna build there?
Roughly speaking, 600 total units, 200 in the first phase.
Yeah.
And then we'll keep some RV parking
Yeah.
where the other 2 phases are going for the meantime.
Yeah, so we'll build it like, it's smart to take the drive-up buildings and make the fence with it, right? Because you want it safe and secure and clean, is the way you want it to look. And, you can make your fence with your buildings and then build out the inside. So we'll have parking on the inside of that, and then maybe like build a climate controlled in the middle if it makes sense. But we want to kind of see how it absorbs in the beginning, because it's not the greatest area of the county, so we're going to have to rent it at a lower rental rate. But the demand is still there, and we did get a feasibility study on that one too, just to justify our assumptions.
Go ahead, back
How
there.
long did the rezoning take on this one compared to your first?
This was 90 days.
Yeah, they're both, yeah, it's the same process. And if it gets turned down at any step, then you're done. You don't get to go back and ask for another chance.
Not ever?
Not for, I don't think as long as you own it. Yeah, basically, I was told a no is a no. Move on.
I was gonna ask, is there such thing as a feasibility study for rezoning? Like before you go in to buy something, you think, oh, I can rezone this and flip this.
Well, we'll go in and talk to the municipalities.
Yeah.
We'll talk with the
Planning and zoning.
planning and
director.
zoning director and get his feel, and he'll talk to the council members and see what everybody. We'll get a rough feel before we do anything.
And the neighbors.
It's a good point, because even if our feasibility says it'll work, doesn't mean it's gonna pass rezoning.
Yeah.
That has no bearing on rezone. So that's our first step. Talk to the neighbors, talk to the council members, talk to the planning and zoning, talk to everybody we can to see it, and get a good feel. There is a little bit of intuition in this game too. And get a good feel to know if it's gonna happen or not. If you're right in the middle of the nicest neighborhood in the town, it's not happening. You know that you gotta be somewhat in a commercial district.
Gotta be in the growth plan for commercial, and if you think,
Industrial is great. They love industrial for self-storage,
yeah, okay,
but it's still gotta make sense
where
to
they
be
want the
in
storage.
proximity
that's not
to
where it should be.
residential. So there is a little bit of cat and mouse. there.
Yeah, so with that, you mentioned talking to the neighbors I don't know if this is how it is in Dixon, you said.
Yeah. Mhm.
Did you have to do any kind of public zoning hearings with?
Well, we do through the 90 days. We'll have the initial reading first. They'll put a sign out. If it passes that, they'll put a sign out for the second reading. That's the public hearing. Anybody has an opportunity at the second hearing to come in and say yay or nay, how they feel. And then the third hearing is basically just to solidify the answer.
Have either of you received any pushback in any time you've been trying to rezone?
First phase, we had a lot of pushback because we bought the property pretty much out from under another developer in the county. And so she had a little bit of she's a little bit sore about it.
She went on a campaign.
And she
door to
brought
door.
everybody she could to the.
We were in
but
the
we still
DC.
passed.
Yes.
Was this
we did.
on the mobile home one or?
No,
Yeah, it's
it
first
is-
phase of our.
First
No,
phase.
everyone
the
loved
first
the
one.
mobile home. The first
Okay,
one, she
yeah.
was on a mission. So we
So,
got it.
yeah, and then in the second phase, that was one of the hard lessons we learned then, because if we would have talked to her in the beginning and kind of made a relationship, she probably wouldn't have went as hard. But, so in the second phase, I went ahead and called her and said, hey, I know you had issues in the first phase, we're about to start again, just want to reach out. And she was very nice and cool about it.
Yeah, because we did a second.
She's like, what am I gonna do now? It's already done. I'm like, yeah, no, but I just wanted to reach out. And she was like, well, I appreciate you reaching out. And she owns the house right next door.
She got rental
Oh,
house
okay.
next door.
And so her big thing was, I was gonna retire and move into that house, and now I gotta look at this. And it's like, no, you weren't.
Our storage is beautiful, by the way, like it is like white painted brick with black windows. It's like nice commercial retail frontage, and that's like storage of today. So you gotta get that vision through to the neighbors because they imagine the junkiest storage, which people do still build really bad looking storage, but it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to store their stuff at junky looking storage anyways.
Hey.